Hello everybody, I'm here with Penny and we are going to be talking you through our latest update, or FAQ updates really, in terms of the BTEC Tech Award in Sport 2022. This follows on from our recording that we released in October, and we're now right at the end of November and just wanted to give you an update. So we're going to move into them quite quickly. So the first one, Penny, how much video evidence is needed? This is coming up quite frequently and it's important that we get this covered off for colleagues.
Yes, thank you, Gareth. Yes, for the video evidence, well, as everyone knows, all learners must be assessed in all their tasks, and you must have some form of evidence to justify the mark for all learners. And we're talking about the leadership and the warm-up. And you must have some evidence to justify the marks for all learners in case there is an inquiry about results. You must have video evidence of a minimum of 20 learners, which must include the learner with the highest overall mark for that component and the candidate with the lowest overall mark for that component. If you're unsure as to who will achieve the overall highest marks, then you may want to video a few additional learners. But from those 20 or minimum of 20, the moderator will select 10 learners from those with the video evidence, and that will form the sample. And then you will upload the work for those 10 learners for task 1, 2 and 3 in component 1, task 1, 2 and 3, 4 for component 2, and it must include the candidate with the highest and lowest overall mark for that component.
Perfect. And I think also what that leans to is if you haven't taught these learners before, for example, in year 9, that conversation really happens to get a sense of where these learners are in terms of their starting point.
Yes.
Okay, next one. So for the formal assessment for component 1 and component 2, what can learners take in with them for that assessment, Penny?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and a question that I've been discussing with many teachers. Learners can use their own class notes, but they cannot take in any textbooks. Learners mustn't be provided with writing frames, with prepared formats, templates, or any form of scaffolding. Now, during your teaching and learning, learners will be given mock assessment, and we encourage that as part of the teaching and learning. However, any material or completed work for mock assessments are not considered course notes and therefore must not be used, must not be taken in to the formal assessment for the 2 internally assessed components.
Great, and this is an opportunity for them to apply their learning, and that's really what this is about, as opposed to them retaining information that they're taking in with them. So really applying that. So thank you for that, Penny. Okay, moving on to our third FAQ for today's session. Can I carry on teaching the component when the formal assessment is taking place?
Yeah, the answer is no. All teaching for the component must have been completed before the formal assessment takes place. And once that assessment has begun, then learners must not be given any feedback, that relates specifically to their evidence or how it can be improved while they're carrying out their assessment. So there must be no teaching, there must be no guidance or anything while they're carrying out the assessment. All the teaching must have been done prior to that formal assessment.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the planning for that, you may well have this set at a certain point. We know we're working in between the Windows dates. However, it might move back a little bit because of whatever reason has come up in your centre. But as Penny has said, once that assessment starts, the learners are undertaking that and the teaching and learning component is completed. Okay, moving on to our fourth one, Penny. In component 1, do tasks 2 and 3 have to be on the same activities as selected in task 1? So this is around what activities learners can do.
Yes, for task 1 on component 1, learners must select 2 activities which are appropriate for the scenario. And to ensure there's continuity, it is suggested that the learner continues with one of the activities they've recommended for task 2 and 3. If a learner is considering 2 activities, it is helpful for them to continue with one of the activities and consider the equipment and technology required for that activity that they spoke about, and then continue with the same activity, and prepare and deliver the warm-up. So it is a recommendation that tasks 2 and 3 are carried out on one of the activities that they have used in task 1.
Right, and this is born from really giving those benefits to the learner. They've been focusing on something, learning about something, and this is an opportunity to take it further. But as Penny has said, it's not mandated that it has to be the same. Okay, and moving on. In component 2, do tasks 2, 3, and 4 have to be assessed in the same activity as task 1 and in the same activity? So might help, Penny, if we can kind of explain that question a little bit more to our listeners.
Yes, so in component 2, there are 4 tasks. Task 1 is the learners have to talk about the components of fitness for an activity, but the type of activity will be identified in the PSA. So we will tell you what type of activity the learners must consider the components of fitness, what type of activity they have to consider. And then task 2, 3, and 4, they can be on a type of activity of the individual learner choice. It doesn't have to be on the same type of activity that they have selected in task 1. For task 2, 3, and 4, it is recommended to not disadvantage the learners that the activity that they choose is the same activity, whereby they're considering the rules and regs of an activity and they're being able to demonstrate their ability in that activity, and then they lead a session in the same activity. So task 2, 3, and 4 should be carried out on the same activity, but it could be different to the activity that they select in task 1.
Great, thank you, Penny. Can learners be given the PSA, so the Pearson set assignment, before the supervised session begins?
This is a really good question, and many teachers have asked. Yes, it should be given to the learners to read, to ensure that they understand what is required in the tasks. In the general guidance section of the teacher guidance for each PSA, it does say you should direct learners to read the information given in the vocational context and each task section of the assignment carefully. This is to really ensure that the learners understand exactly what is required of them. Because remember, the PSA, we're not trying to test can they remember this and that, but can they apply their knowledge? And can they apply their knowledge? Do they understand exactly what is required of them? So please do give it out to the learners and make sure that you read through it so that they are very clear as to what is expected.
Yeah, and you're right there, Penny. There's so many benefits from that can be built into the process. I think it takes away a lot of that anxiety for learners, so they're comfortable with the task before they actually sit down and do it. And they can start to process that as well, and start that thought process happening for when they do sit that supervised session. Okay, this is an interesting one that we've been asked, so we've put it into this session. Can I give predictive grades for the components?
Yeah, it is very difficult at the very beginning of a new qualification because raw mark grade boundaries will only be set at the end of the series. And those grade boundaries will be published on results day. Those raw mark grade boundaries will be published. And you will then be able to convert the raw mark into UMS marks. And it's those UMS marks that will contribute towards the learner's final qualification grade. Each learner will be given a UMS mark for each component. You will add those together and that will give the final grade for the learners. But at this moment in time, you'll need to use your experience to estimate the level at which the learners are working. But going forward, you'll be able to use the raw mark grade boundaries from previous series as a guide, and I have to be really clear, you can only use it as a guide because raw mark grade boundaries could change, they could go up, they could go down in each series. So they're not stable, but you could use them as a guide, and that will sort of help you in predicting grades for your learners.
Yeah, that's really useful detail, Penny, and I think the caveats come through there, but I think that gives an outline of what practitioners and centres can think about and how they might look at this approach. So Penny, that's all our sort of significant number of volumes of FAQs that have come in this last month or so. I'm really mindful that people may be listening to this, and if they're new to the qualification, this probably isn't the place to start, and we do have lots of other bits that would be able to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's lots and lots of information on the website. You know, you can always get in contact with me. You can send me an email to teachingpnsport@pearson.com, and I'll always try and answer any queries that you have. So please don't hesitate. If you've got, it is a new qualification. We do understand that people have lots and lots of questions, and because it's not familiar as yet. So please do get in contact with me, and I'm more than happy to support you.
Great. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.